Value of perquisite in respect of motor car. What is perquisite? The perquisite is the benefit given by the employer to the employee. So anything, the taxable perquisite would be taxable in the hands of the employee when they calculate the salary, sorry, income from salary. So the value of perquisites in respect of the motor car. So here motor car may be owned by the employee, or where the motor car is owned by the employer, or where the employee owns any automotive conveyance other than the motor car, and running and expenses charges are made or reimbursed by the employer. So in the three cases, what will be the value of purchases? Then we should understand here. Now, the value of purchase where the motor car is owned by the employee. Then in that case, the where the expenses when the car expenses are made by the employee and the car expenses, that is running and maintenance expenses, are made or reimbursed by the employer, then in that case what will be the value of purchases when the motor car is owned by the employee? Then now let us discuss with this. When the car expenses are made by the employee, then in that case, then we should know that then there is no purchases because the expenses is made by the employee. So in that case, no purchases will be here. But if the running and maintenance expenses are run or made by the employer, then in that case, first of all, we should know the purpose of use of the motor car. If the purpose of the use of the motor car for official use, then there is the value of the then we calculate the value of the purchase. If the car is used only for personal use, or if the car is used partly for the official purposes and partly for personal purposes, then the value of purchase will be calculated. Now, if the running and maintenance expenses are made or reimbursed by the employer and the motor car is owned by the employee and the car is used wholly for official purposes, then there will be no value of perquisite, provided the two conditions need to be satisfied. What are these two conditions? The condition number one, the employer has maintained the complete details of journey undertaken for official purpose, which may include the date of journey, destination, mileage, and amount of expenditure incurred. And number second condition is the employer gives a certificate to the effect that the expenditure was incurred only and exclusively for the performance of the official duties. If these two conditions satisfied, then the motor car owned by the employee used for the official purposes, then the value of purchase will be nil. But if the car is used only for personal expense, personal purposes, then the value of purchase should be calculated like that. So calculations of taxable value of purchase is equal to actual expenditure incurred by the employer less amount recovered from the employee, then the positive balance being the taxable value of purchase. So if it is negative, then the taxable purchase value will not be there. So in that case, the taxable value of purchase will be in positive if the car is used wholly for the personal purposes, and if the car is used wholly for the if the car is used partly for official purposes and partly for personal purposes, then the calculations of the taxable value of purchase is like that: actual expenditure incurred by the employer less amount used for the official purposes and less amount recovered from the employee, then the balance positive balance amount being taxable value of purchases, and in this way we have to calculate the value of taxable service, value of taxable purchases. So here the employee, therefore the here the employee has, therefore the purpose should be, the most important thing is the purpose. If the purpose is for personal purpose, then the value of purpose will be there. If it is partly purpose and partly for official purpose, partly for personal purposes, then the value of purchase will be there. And in case of like that, so if the car is owned by the employer, previously, I have discussed about that the car is owned by the employee. Now, where the car is owned by the employer, then the value of purchase will be there. When the running and maintenance expenses are made by the employee, or when the running and maintenance expenses are made by reimbursed by the employer. So, in the two different cases, the value of purchase we have to find out. Now, when the running and maintenance expenses are made by the employee, then the purpose will be there. There are three type of purpose. One, the car is used wholly for official purpose. The car is used wholly for personal purposes, or the car is used partly for official purposes and partly for personal purposes. Now, if if the car is used wholly for official purposes, then there will no value of purchases. If the car is used wholly for the personal purposes, then the calculations of the taxable value of purchase like that. Expenditure incurred by the employer, suppose for example salary of chauffeur, that is driver, and chauffeur, the driver, and the higher charges if car is taken on rent, add 10% of actual cost of the car if the car is owned by the employer. If the employer take the car on higher charges basis, then there need not be calculate the 10% of the actual cost. That is actually this is the 10% of depreciation of the actual cost of the car. So if the car is owned by the employee, then the 10% depreciation will be charged. If it is car is not owned by the employee, then the employer, then the higher charges will be there. So expenditure incurred by the employer, the salary of the driver, or if it is if it is taken on rent, then higher charges. And if it is not taken on rent but actually owned by the employer, then 10% of the actual cost of the car, that is 10% depreciation of the car, and less amount recovered from the employee, and the positive balance being taxable value of purchases will be there. So if the car is used wholly for personal purposes, then the expenses add higher charges, add 10% depreciation, less amount recovered for the employee, then the balance positive amount will be value of taxable perquisite. And if the car is partly used for official purposes and partly for the personal purposes, then in that case, the calculations of the taxable value of purpose is like that. Running and maintenance expenses will be there, being rupees 600 per month if the cubic capacity of the engine up to say 1.6 liter, or being rupees 900 per month if cubic capacity of the engine exceed 1.6 liter. Add salary of the chauffeur, or if the chauffeur is provided, that is salary of the driver if driver is provided, then the positive balance amount will be the taxable value of perquisite. So this is in this way we have to calculate the value of taxable perquisite. And if the employee, if the purpose is there are three purposes there. The purpose, if the running and maintenance expenses are made by the employer, previously the running and maintenance expenses are made by the employee, now the running and maintenance expenses is made by the employer. Then the purpose will be three. The purpose is the car is used wholly for official purposes, and the car is used wholly for personal purposes, and the car is used partly for official purposes and partly for personal purposes. If the car is wholly used for official purposes, that is that the car is owned by the employer, the expenses made by the employer, and the car is used for wholly for official purposes. In that case, there is no perquisite if the two conditions are satisfied. What are these two conditions? We have previously discussed about the two conditions, that the employer has maintained the complete details of journey undertaken for official purpose, which may include the date of journey, destination, mileage, and amount of expenditure incurred, And second one, the employer gives a certificate to the effect that expenditure was incurred wholly and exclusively for the performance of the official duties. And if the two condition is not satisfied, then there will be value of perquisite will arise if it is, even though it is used for official purposes. If it is used for personal purposes, only for personal purposes, then the value of taxable service will be like that. Then the calculation of the taxable value of perquisite expenditure incurred by the employer, that is example for salary of the chauffeur, that is the salary of the driver, and hire charges if the car is taken on rent at 10% of the actual cost of the car if the car is owned by the employer, and less the amount recovered from the employee, then the positive balance will be taken as the taxable value of the perquisite. Now, if the car is used partly for official purpose and partly for the personal purposes, then in that case, then the calculation taxable value of service taxable value of purpose will be running and maintenance expenses being 1,800 per month if the cubic capacity of the engine up to 1.6 liter, or being 2,400 per month if the cubic capacity of the engine exceed 1.6 liters. Add the salary of the chauffeur if the chauffeur is provided, then the positive balance of will be taxable value of perquisite. So if it is run by the employee, if the car is owned by the employee and the expenditure incurred by the employer, then the for the official purposes no value of perquisite if the two conditions satisfied, if the value of perquisite if the two conditions are not satisfied. And for wholly used for official purposes, wholly for the personal purposes, then the calculation will be like that. And if it is for partly for official and partly for personal purposes, then the calculation will be like that. And here is that we should calculate in this way. Okay. When the employee owns any automotive conveyance other than the car, and the running and maintenance charges are made or reimbursed by the employer, since the employer reimburses or made the expenses of the employee, then there will be questions of the perquisite. So the questions of the perquisite will be there. So, how do I calculate the value of perquisite? The purpose, there are two purposes there. The car is wholly used for official purposes, and the car is partly used for official purposes and partly for personal purposes. If the car is wholly used for personal purposes, then the no value of perquisite if the two conditions are satisfied. The conditions I have previously discussed. The employer has maintained the complete details of journey and again for official purpose, which may include the date of journey, destination mileage, and amount of the expenditure incurred, and the employer gives a certificate to the effect that the expenditure was incurred wholly and exclusively for the performance of the official duties. And if the value of purpose will be there if any of the two conditions is does not satisfied by the company and does not maintain these two conditions actually. And if the car is used partly for official purposes and partly for the personal purposes, then the calculations of the taxable value will be like that. The expenditure incurred by the employer and less amount used for official purposes, say 900 or the higher amount, which will be higher, will be taken as deduction, and less amount would be recovered from the employee. Then the positive balance being the taxable value of perquisite. So this is in this way we should calculate the value of taxable perquisite. So basically there are three cases. We calculate the value of taxable service in case of the motor car when the car is owned by the employee, when the car is owned by the employer, and when the employee owns any automotive conveyances other than the car. Then but the running and maintenance expenses are made by the employer. Then the value of purchase will be there.